Folks, France is blowing up. I mean, we're talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets in Paris and Lyon and other cities over the last 24 hours in protest of the Macron government and its insistence on going ahead with pension reforms that are hurting the working class. So we're going to be looking at precisely what the protesters are so concerned about and why it all reflects nothing short of an implosion in Macron's support and approval. The latest polls are out, and let's just say things couldn't get worse for Macron. If you stick with me to the end, I got a great free gift for you, so stay tuned. Greetings, everyone. A huge happy Saturday to all of you. I hope you're all having a lovely weekend. If you have not already done so, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss a single video where we analyze current events in light of super awesome conservative trends so you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. Now, before we get into the fall of Macron and all these unbelievable protests, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's our good friends over at My Patriot Supply. My Patriot Supply food kits last up to 25 years in storage, and they include breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And if you act now, you'll save 40% on a 2-week emergency food kit when you go to my special website by clicking on the link below. Now, this is a limited time. You don't want to wait, especially for an emergency to happen before you actually respond to one. Take action now by clicking on that link below. Save 40% off with your 2-week emergency food kit today. All right, so let's dive right in here, gang. Protests have exploded throughout France over the last 24 hours. That Macron has announced he would indeed go forward with some very controversial pension reform plans, the biggest overhaul of the nation's pension system since World War II. Now, just so you have a sense of why so many are upset at Macron, I think it's crucial to remember, because the French certainly do, it's crucial that we remember that Macron was a former investment banker, okay? He was a former investment banker who, shortly after coming to office as president, abolished what was called the French solidarity tax on wealth, which many interpreted as, your quintessential tax break for the rich, the ultra wealthy. Now, he's trying to tackle France's radically complicated and congested pension system. And so what is he doing? Well, he's raising the retirement age. He's requiring workers to work longer. Now, you have to appreciate the optics here. He cuts taxes on the wealthy and then turns around and requires workers to work at least 2 years longer before they can begin collecting their pension. So this is perceived by many French as funding pension reforms on the backs of workers rather than raising taxes on corporations and the wealthy. Far from it. Not only has Macron, the former investment banker, refused to tax the wealthy, he's actually given them a tax break. So the optics here is that in Macron's France, the wealthy have it easier while workers have it harder, okay? And so what we're seeing is a massive workers' revolt against Macron and his globalist policies. And what's so interesting here is that the workers of the world are indeed uniting, like Marx exhorted them to. But to the shock of our globalist elite, they're not uniting as a communist or leftist revolution. They're increasingly uniting as a nationalist, populist, right-wing revolt against liberal left-wing globalism. So that's kind of the big picture of what's going on here. Now, you'll notice the media has been rather eerily silent in all this, right? Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. We've got everything under control. But the pictures don't lie. This is why it's so awesome that we've got a platform like YouTube to be able to connect with each other and share on-the-ground footage like what we're seeing here. Things are beginning to just frankly unravel in France in ways that I don't think Macron can recover from. And if the latest polls that just come out are accurate, the vast majority of French don't believe he'll survive this either. The latest poll to come out of BFM TV found that over 61% of French citizens oppose Macron's pension reforms. And if you could believe it, it actually gets even worse. 62% of those surveyed were disappointed with Macron's performance as president. Macron has a 62% disapproval rating. And it gets worse. You ready for this? 69% don't think Macron will be reelected in 2022. 69% of the French do not believe Macron can win the next election. And so these polls, these frankly, let's be blunt, humiliating polls, are just amplifying the abject failure that is Macron's presidency, which is on full display for all to see with these massive protests. In fact, yesterday, Friday, was the 51st straight day of France's longest strike in 40 years. This is a strike specifically aimed at shutting down France's public transport system, its schools, hospitals, courthouses, even their theaters. You'll definitely want to click on the link here to check out the video we did on protesters storming a theater that Macron was at last weekend to confront him directly, and he actually had to be whisked away by security forces. It was absolutely stunning. I'll link the video down below for you as well in the pinned comment section. And to make matters even worse, what's happening here is that pension reform protesters have begun teaming up with the Yellow Vest protesters who are now in their 62nd, 63rd straight week of protests. And what's important for us to understand from a political vantage point is that the pension reform protesters and the Yellow Vest protesters are increasingly uniting as a nationalist populist right-wing revolt against leftist liberal globalism. Perhaps the single most important political paradigm shift that's going on in both Europe and the United States is the mass defection of workers leaving the political left and embracing the nationalist populist right. Since at least the Great Depression and World War II, you all know that working class has been the single most reliable voting bloc for Western leftist parties. Leftist parties were seen as a hedge against the big bankers and corporate executives that treated workers like wage slaves. Now, with the political left embracing neoliberal economic policies on the one hand and cultural Marxist identity politics on the other, workers no longer have a home on the left. And so they're defecting en masse to the nationalist populist right that have abandoned the neocon love affair with unfettered free markets and have instead embraced economic nationalism, which is a perfect home for the working class. And so we saw this mass defection in the Brexit vote back in 2016 when Britain's workers overwhelmingly voted to leave the EU, although virtually every single one of their Labour MPs voted that they voted for wanted to remain. In the United States, just a couple of months later, we saw 200 counties in Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, and Pennsylvania that voted for the Democratic presidential candidate in every single election since the 1980s by a 20-point margin, suddenly swing over and vote for Trump by a comparable 20-point margin. It was one of the most stunning political swings we've ever witnessed in American politics, and that was largely in workers-based counties. And in 2017, in France's presidential elections, the working class was the sole voting constituency where the majority of them voted for Marine Le Pen, who, by the way, has officially announced her bid to unseat Macron in 2022. Polls are now consistently showing Le Pen with a higher approval rating than Macron, and 2022 does promise to be an extraordinary showdown between the globalist elite and a massive nationalist populist revolt. All right, now for your free gift, I promise you. If you click on the link below, you can get my new book, Uprising, How the Yellow Vest Protests Are Changing France and Overturning the World Order, absolutely free as an ebook download. If you want to understand in detail what is perhaps the single greatest threat to the globalist world order going on today, then this is the book for you. You'll discover the political, the economic, and the cultural dynamics that are behind the Yellow Vest Uprising, why they are only getting stronger, and what it means for a new political order in France and for Europe as a whole. It's absolutely as free as my gift to you. My one humble request is that you leave a review on the Amazon book page, which will help so much with Amazon's promotion of the book, and I can't thank you enough for that. Now, before you go, come on, you've got room for one more, don't you? One more video. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse for the EU, we uploaded a video of Viktor Orban of Hungary declaring that they might be leaving the EU and focusing instead on building a European-wide Christian democratic movement. You're going to absolutely love it. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.